Okay. Uh, this evening we are going to be looking at something known as formatting Python strings. To format something is to, especially a string, when you format a string, you want this string to look in a certain way. I'm sure you have at one point typed a Word document, then there's some text you want to be the heading, maybe some words you want to be bold, or some you want to be italicized or something like that. So basically making modification to modifying a string so that it looks a bit more different than what Python has been giving us. Okay, that's what formatting is. Is that clear?
Yes.
Yeah, so basically sometimes you want your string to look in a certain way. So for you to accomplish that, you actually need to do a bit more work. Not impossible, but just a bit more than what you have been doing with printing this string, then we see whatever Python has given us. Okay, so this evening our objectives are as follows. We want to, by the time we're done, hopefully you'll be able to format a string using a method. So formatting in Python is done using a method called format. I think we have seen this just a bit, but today we'll try to look at it a bit more in detail so that we see how this particular method can be used. We'll also try to see how we can specify string representations. So basically, how do you tell Python, check fine here, I want to put a number here, or I want to put a string, or I want to put something with so many. Okay, then also how to set the precision of a floating point number. Floating point numbers are numbers with decimal points. So how many decimal points do you want a number to have? The actual number itself might have more decimal points, but maybe at this particular point you just want to tell Python and say, I just want 2 decimal points or 3 decimal points. How do you do that? There is also something called how to access a value or a variable passed to format using an index. So we're going to see how to do this with format, because the format method accepts variables. So there's a first variable, there's a second variable, there's a third variable, there's a last variable, like that. So how you can actually access these variables using their position. And if you are talking about position of things somewhere, then that brings in the idea of an index. So how can you use an index when you're trying to format your string? So we'll see that. Then there's also alignment. If you want your string to be to the left, most of what you've been doing, our strings have been aligned on the left, but maybe that's not what you want. You want your string to be on the right or to be in the center. Then there is something called padding. You can tell Python, as Python creates a placeholder for you, you can tell Python you want this many spaces. However, once you put in your value in that particular placeholder, maybe the variable or whatever value it has might not be enough to fill up those spaces. So what do you want Python to do with the rest of the spaces? What does Python fill them with? That's what's known as padding. We're going to see how that works. Then of course, there's how do you truncate a long string. Sometimes the string is very long, but you don't want to show all of it, so you have to tell Python, oh, I just want up to here. There's combining string and padding here. Then how do you padding numbers? Then how do you display signed numbers? Then how do you use named placeholders? These placeholders can actually be given names. Then how do you avoid errors with strings? Then there's something called the Zen of Python. Basically, the Zen of Python is a set of idioms which help you write good Python code. With all these things, I'm beginning to think this might take us a bit more. Probably we'll finish this thing tomorrow. But anyway, let's get started. Before we could carry out any string formatting, we are actually going to be using the format method. But before we can do that, we need to create some strings which we can use. Okay. So when you're using format, if you're going to use the format method to actually do this formatting business, if you're going to use this method, then inside your string somewhere you need to add some placeholders. Those placeholders are indicated by curly brackets. So in these curly brackets, that's where the format method is actually going to put the value you have given it, or the value which is contained in the variable you have actually given it. And that's what we're going to see with format. Okay, so to start with, we create a variable called levy. You create a variable called name, then we give it a value levy. Okay, so I am sure by now this should be very easy to do. You have a string levy, then you store it in the name, variable name. Then we print name. Okay, so now we have confirmed that our string or our name levy has been stored in print. Now, how are you going to print out this string hello levy? So basically, for you to do that using format, levy is stored in the variable name. That's where levy is. That's why you're going to get the levy. Okay, levy is stored in the variable name. So if you're going to use format, you need to give the format method, this format, you need to give format name, this variable name. Okay, now what format is going to do, it is going to put this, the value which is in name, it is going to replace it. It's not going to put it there. So when you do a print, those curly brackets are not going to be there, but instead they are going to be replaced with the value of name. That's how this thing works. So this bit, this part of the print up to here, this is what's known as a string format. Are we clear? That first bit, that is what's known as a string format. It basically tells the print function how you want to print out things. So basically what you want to say is print, you're going to start with hello, then after hello there's going to be a comma, then there's going to be a space, then after the space create room for some value which I'm going to give to the format method, and the format method is going to place that value there. Then after that there's going to be an exclamation mark. So when you run this, that is what you get. You get hello levy. So you can clearly see the hello, this hello is this one here, hello, then the comma, then the space, next these curly brackets. These curlies have been replaced by the value which is stored in name. And how did this happen? It happened because we gave name to the format method. So the format method checks out and says, okay, fine, there is somewhere where I have to put something, and what have I been given? I've been given name. So it gets whatever is in name, it puts it there. Is that clear? Okay.
Yes.
Next, we create a variable age which has a number. We print out age here. We create a string format which will allow us to print the following. Levi is 34 years old. So how are we going to do this? There is Levi. Levi is contained in the variable name. There is the 34. The 34 is contained in the variable age. So if we're going to do this, then we have to give format, this method format. We have to give it two things. We have to give it the name. Okay, we have to give it the name. What am I looking at first? Alright, yeah, we have to give it the name of the variable, the variables. We have to give it the variable name. We also have to give it the variable age. Two things, name and age. Then all this is enclosed in the print function. All this is enclosed in the print function. So what's going to happen here? So if you look at the string format, this first bit, if you look at this first bit here, okay, if you look at this part, you are going to see that there's a first curly bracket here. That's a first placeholder. There is also the second curly bracket here, which is the second placeholder. So what format is going to do, it's going to get the first variable, name. Okay, it's going to put it in the first curly bracket. Then it's going to, the value which is stored in the first variable, which is Levi, Levi will be put in the first curly bracket. Then in the second curly bracket, format for the second curly bracket, format is going to look for another variable, a second one, age. This age, which is 34, is going to be put in this second curly bracket, so that if you run this, you get Levi is 34 years old. Is this clear?
Yes, it is. It is.
So what you see here is the more placeholders you have, like here we've got two placeholders, okay, that means that you need more variables this side. You need two variables. So if you've got two placeholders, you need to give format two variables so that it can actually put the values there. Okay, we create another variable, balance, maybe some bank balance or something. Let's say you've got 100 kwacha in your bank account. Then you print out balance 100. So what do you want to say here? You want to greet Levi, say hello Levi, your account balance is 100 kwacha. That's what you want to do. Okay, Levi itself is in a variable name. Then the 100, this 100 bit is in the variable balance. Okay, so you can say this bit here, you can create a string format like this. Say hello, then comma, a placeholder, the first placeholder. This is where you want to put Levi. Your account balance is, this is K for the kwacha. Then a placeholder where you want to put the 100. Since you've got two placeholders, again, you need to give format two variables, okay, or two values. The first one, name, which contains the value Levi, that's what's going to be put here in the first curly bracket. The second one, balance, that's what's going to be put in the second curly brackets there, so that when you run these, you get hello Levi, your account balance is 100 kwacha. Is this clear?
Yes, it is.
If I change the account balance, the balance to let's say 150, I run balance again. If I try to print out this, it's going to say, hello Levi, your account balance is 150. Are you seeing how this works? Are we clear on how this works? Are we seeing what's happening?
I've not seen how has it changed from 100 to 150?
Because I changed it here.
Oh, okay.
I changed it there and I ran it. So like right now, I will change it to 180. Then I run it. I store 180 in balance. Then I run this one here. Then it changes to 180 here. Is this clear?
It is clear.
Okay. Now, there is actually more you can do with these placeholders. You can actually tell Python to say, in this placeholder, I want you to only put strings here. In this other placeholder, I want you to only put numbers. Because the problem here is, if I create another cell, let me create something else so that you see what the difficulty is. If I say print, then next I say hello, comma, then I do this, then exclamation mark. Your account balance is this. Then somehow, let's say by mistake, instead of writing name faced, I write balance. Then after that, I write name. Have you seen this? This one, yes. I change, instead of writing name faced, I write balance. Then after that, I write name. When I run this, Python will not know that I've made a mistake. It's going to say, hello 180, your account balance is KLevy. Are you seeing this?
Yes.
Yes. So basically what Python does is, what the format method does is, it gets the first thing you have given it. It puts it in the first placeholder. Then it gets a second item, or the second variable, it puts it in the second placeholder. So if you leave it like this, the way it is, you can end up getting something like this, which is an error. Okay? Quite alright, the Python runs, but this is not what you wanted to do. So this is some kind of a mistake. So with these placeholders, these curly brackets, okay, in these curly brackets, you can actually tell Python to say, in this particular curly bracket, you should expect a string. In this other one, you should expect a number, so that if something like this happens, then Python should generate an error telling you to say, oh, in this curly bracket, you told me to expect a name of somebody, but I received a number. So if you told Python, say, you should expect a name, but Python receives a number, then it should alert you to say there is a mistake. Is that clear? Yes. So that's the next stage where we're going to move to. We are going to see how to tell Python to say, okay, fine, use this curly bracket for a float, use this curly bracket for an integer, use this curly bracket for a string, use this curly bracket for some this and this, like that. Okay, so what kind of characters does Python accept? Well, Python accepts a bunch of characters. For example, if you, in the curly brackets, in these curly brackets, okay, in these curly brackets, if you give a B, so first of all, the way you tell Python to say, I want you to accept this particular type of data inside the curly brackets, you need to type a colon, then after the colon, you need to follow up that with the character, with the letter which specifies or which means the kind of information you want to be stored in that particular curly bracket. We're going to see how this works. So these are the characters which Python accepts, or these are the letters which Python accepts. If you give Python a B, Python will think, okay, this is what you mean. You mean a binary integer, a number of a digit, a number which is made up of ones and zeros. That's what you mean. If you give Python C, it means you're talking about a single character or a letter or whatever it is, a punctuation or an exclamation mark, but basically it's a single character. If you give Python this, in that curly bracket, after the comma, after the colon, you put A's, then you're telling Python that it should expect a string. If you give Python a D, then you're telling Python that it should expect a decimal number, okay, a counting number. If you give Python an E, small letter E, or a capital E, then you are telling Python to say, the number which is going to be put here, I want you to display it as an exponential, or basically 10 to the power something. Okay, if in those curly brackets, if you put small f or capital F, then you are telling Python you should expect a number with a decimal point. Okay, if you give Python G, the letter G or capital G, you are telling Python to say Python should decide on its own whether that number which is going to be accepted there, it should be displayed as a floating point number or a number with a decimal point, or it should be displayed in scientific notation. Then of course there is this one, or then you're saying Python should display something as an octal. Basically this is base 8, or X as a hexadecimal. Then this percent sign means percentage. Let us see how this works. It's not very difficult. So here we create our string format, this string format. We want to say hello to somebody. Okay, so what do? What we want in these curly brackets, we are telling Python expect a string, expect the name of somebody. Okay, are we clear? So how do you do that? Inside the curly brackets, you put a colon, then after the colon, you tell Python you should expect a string. And how do you tell Python to expect a string? After the colon, you type S. That is how you tell Python, say Python should expect a string. So if Python is going to expect a string, if you run this, it prints out hello Levy. Levy is a string. The variable name, if you try to check the data type of name, if you say type name, you check the data type of name, type name, then you run this, you see that name is a string. So that's why it runs. On the other hand, if you try to say print, then hello, then you give format the variable age. Now age is not a string. As you can see, age is an integer. So this one now, since you have said the only thing that's supposed to be put there is a string, then we are actually given Python age, which is an integer. This creates a problem. So if something like this happens, now you have said in these curly brackets here, you want a string. Okay, you are expecting a string in these curly brackets, but what format has been given is not a string. It has been given a number. Okay, Is this clear?
Yes.
You are sure you only say hello to people. Hello Jack, hello Jane, like that. You don't say hello 34, hello 12, like that. You don't say hello to somebody's age. So here you're now taking more, you're taking more precaution. You're telling Python, in here, what should come here is a string. So if somebody makes a mistake like this, where instead of putting a variable which contains a string, they put a variable which contains a number, then they try to run this. This generates an error. What kind of error? A value error. Python has a problem with the value which is stored in age. It is not the same type as what is required here. What is required here in the curly brackets is a string. But what format has been given to place here is an integer. Can you see this?
Yes.
Rachel?
Yes.
Okay, good. So basically, now we are tightening the nose on what Python can do. We are trying to be more specific. Okay. So we go back to this same one. Levi is 34 years old. Now, in the first curly brackets here, we are being specific. We want to say in this curly bracket, we want to store a string. Then in the second curly brackets, we want to store a number. Okay? And age is a number. So if we do this, and since there are two curly brackets, it means that we need to give format two variables. The first one is name, the second one is age. So name has the string Levi. That's what's going to be put here. Then age has got the number 34. That's what's going to be put here. If we run this, that's what we get. Levi is 34 years old. If we try to switch these, somehow I write age first, then name comes second here. Then Python tries to put this age here. Okay, tries to put that age there. But age is not a string. Then next, the second placeholder, what is expected is a number. Then the second variable is Levi, which contains a string. So there's a problem here. The first placeholder is expecting a string, but you're giving it a number. The second placeholder is expecting a number, but we're giving it a string. So we have added requirements. Say in this placeholder, this is what is required. Then in this other placeholder, this is what is required. And since we have switched the values, as you can see, there is a problem, especially the first one here. Python says in this placeholder, what is required is a string, but what has been given is an integer. Are you seeing this?
Yes.
Yeah. If these things were not there, if these requirements, these specifications were not there, if we ran this, there will be no problem. 34 is Levi years old. That's what you'd get. So Python wouldn't know that there's a mistake. But because you have put some specifications, say, in this one, what is required is the name. Then in this one, what is required is a number. When you run it, then it gives you an error. It tells you there is a problem with what I was told I should expect and what I've been given. Is this clear?
Yes.
Yeah. So basically, if you can actually tell Python, say, in this placeholder, you should expect a string. In this placeholder, you should expect a decimal number. String X, decimal number D.
Okay, so if you want, you can even now switch them there in the curly brackets. Like in the first curly brackets there, you can even put the D where there's S, and then where there is D there, you can put S.
If you do that, is this going to make any sense?
No, it can't make sense.
No, it won't make sense. It won't make sense.
It will not give you an error, but it won't make sense. There. It can run. 34 is Levi years old, but it doesn't make sense. What kind of thing is this?
Okay, but yes, it can't make sense if you read it, but it won't give you an...
Yes, it won't give you an error. Okay, it won't give you an error, but it doesn't make any sense. Okay? And programs, apart from not giving you any errors, they need to make sense. Is that clear? When a program runs, but it gives you nonsense, then we say what it has given you is something called a logic error. There is no logic, but it runs. Is that clear? So in this case, what we have is a logic error. This thing doesn't make any sense. So we go back to string, then D. Then we try to run it. In this case, when it tries to run, then it gives you an error. What you have here is an error called a runtime error. Okay, when a program is trying to run, then it generates an error telling you there's something which... Alright, okay. Are we clear about those tightening the specifications on the placeholders?
Yes.
Alright. Next is we create a variable PHY. That's what I think PHY is. We create a variable PHY. Then you say PHY here. You want to display PHY. PHY is equals to, then you want to tell Python. Now, a number like PHY, if you check the data type of PHY, say type PHY. If you check the data type of PHY, PHY is a float. Okay, so how do you tell Python that in these curly brackets it should expect a float? So you put your colon, then after the colon you put F. F is what? It's either small f or capital F. You have a choice here. You can either use small f or capital F. Okay, so you are telling Python to say, okay, in this curly bracket, you need to expect a value of this nature. So you run that. All right. So Python actually, in this case, also does something else. Have you seen what it has done? It says pi, which is this pi, equals to this number. Is this a number we stored in pi?
Yes.
Is it? I think the number we stored was this one. And it appears to have more decimal places than this. Have you noticed? This one only has how many decimal places? 2, 4, 6. This one is only up to 6 decimal places. This one has got more than 6 decimal places, definitely.
But what has happened? The others have been cut off.
Yeah, the others have been cut off or rounded off. It has rounded off. So basically, Python has decided to say, this number in a string, I'm going to display it only up to 6 decimal places. It has decided on its own. So in this case, Python has made a decision for you to say, I'm going to display this number only up to 6 decimal places. If you, the pi itself, PI, you say print PI on its own. You see? If you say print PI on its own, Python displays all the digits. When you put it with the format, you want to format the Python somehow decides, say, okay, fine, I'll show you a number up to 6 decimal places. If you don't like the 6 decimal places, tell me something else to do. That is where this thing where Python displays the number only up to 6 decimal places. This is what's known as precision. How many decimal places do you want Python to display your number up to? That's what's known as precision. So without you saying anything, if you're trying to do this format business here, then you want to give it a floating point. Python on itself decides to say, I'm going to show you your number only up to 6 decimal places. If you don't like that, tell me. Is this clear?
It is clear.
Yes.
Yeah, the number itself is still there, and it hasn't changed in any way. It's just how far Python wants to change this number. You can see here 2, 4, 6 up to there, right? So the last number, which is 6, has been, this 2 has been, 6 has been round, like it's going to be eliminated, then it's rounded, then you get your 2, your 3. That's where this 3 comes from. The 3 was not there. It's because the number has been rounded off. Okay. Are we clear?
Clear.
Okay. There's another thing you can try to do. For example, the number 34. This 34. Okay. If you want to display, so you want to display this 34 in binary. You want to display the 34 in binary in terms of ones and zeros. I think some of this code has already run a bit. So just a minute. Let me try to restart and clear output. Because we're kind of looking at stuff which has already run. Let me try to upload a new output. Just a minute. Okay. So let's see what we have. Living. Run, print, run, long to read, age, run, out, okay, out, okay, balance. Just a minute, give me a few minutes. Okay, so next was the representation of strings. This one, okay, that one, give an error, then next, this, that, Okay, so here with the 34 being displayed in binary with ones and zeros. So basically, when you do this, when you create a placeholder here, then you put in, after the colon, you put in B. You are telling Python the number I'm going to give you, display it in terms of ones and zeros. Is that clear?
Yes.
All right. Then the last bit is you can tell Python to make a choice on what to do. When you give Python in the placeholder, you're giving Python G. With G, Python chooses what's convenient. Either G or capital G, it's going to display your number in decimal, or it's going to display your number in scientific notation. So Python will choose. Now, it doesn't make a lot of sense, like in this case, what I've done here, to display a number, okay, pi. Pi definitely is going to be displayed in decimal. But if you tell Python to display it in decimal, you can see our pi actually had more decimal places. But this pi is actually, right now, it's displayed only up to how many decimal places? Up to 5. So Python says, oh, you want me to display your pi? I'll just display it up to 5 decimal places. In this case, when you give the G here, when you put a G here, when you put the F there, when you give Python the F here, when you put F there, Python displayed your pi up to 6 decimal places. When you put G, it displays it only up to only up to 5 decimal places. You see this? Have you seen the difference?
Yes.
Now, in the case of G, Python is the one which chooses what to do. Okay. For example, if you give format a very large number like this one, this is a distance from the Earth to the Sun. So basically you're saying Earth-Sun distance equals, then this is where you're going to put the number, then in meters. Then you're telling Python, I want you to display this number with a decimal point. No matter how big it is, I want you to display it with a decimal point. This is what Python is going to do. It's like, fine, I'm going to display a number here, 49 billion, then 600 million, stuff like that. Then there's a decimal point. Then after the decimal point, Python makes another decision. Say, okay, fine, since you told me I'm going to give you a number up to how many decimal places? Up to 6 decimal places. So if you tell Python to display a number with F as a float, this float, your number, without you saying anything else, your number is going to be displayed up to 6 decimal places. The same way our pi here was displayed up to how many decimal places? 6. Okay, so if you don't tell Python, then, but however you tell Python, say, I want you to expect a floating point number, Python is going to display it up to 6 decimal places. On the other hand, you can tell Python to display your number, your value, this large value, in scientific notation, E. So you give E there, then that tells Python, you're telling Python, I want you to display this number in scientific notation. When you do that, I hope you still remember something about scientific notation. This is what Python does. There, 1.496, then a bunch of zeros, e to the power 11 meters. So your number gets displayed in scientific notation. So you're telling Python how to display something. Say, okay, I want you, the first case here, I want you to display this number with a decimal point. Here, you're telling Python, I want you to display this number in scientific notation. So when it displays in scientific notation, actually, how many decimal places do you get after that? This is 2, 4, 6. It goes up to 6. So your number is expressed up to 6 decimal places. Then here, when you give Python a G, Python can display your number either like this, it can display a number like this, or it can display a number like this. It will make the decision on its own, depending on what that number is, how large that number is, or how small it is. So in the case of the Earth-Sun distance, what does Python decide? What does it think is more easier to display? This is what Python does. It actually displays it in a different way. Here, as you can see, there's a bunch of trailing zeros here. You have seen those? Have you seen the trailing zeros? 3 of them?
Yes.
This time around, when you give Python, say, okay, fine, I want you to display this number either with a decimal point or you display it in scientific notation. Python decides, okay, I'm going to display the number like this. This which we are doing here, this is what's known as string formatting. You, as the person who is doing the programming, you are deciding, you're telling Python how to display numbers, how to display names and stuff like that, where this number is supposed to be and how, what is it supposed to look like. This is what's known as formatting. Is this clear?
Yes.
Rachel?
It's clear.
Okay. Now, you will notice something here. When you say, okay, you want to display a number with its decimal point like here with F, Python has been giving you that, but it has been giving you up to 6 decimal places. The same thing has happened here. Okay? It gives you all the way up to 6 decimal places. It appears as if Python already has an idea in its mind how many decimal places it is supposed to display numbers up to. 6 decimal places, like in this case. But what if you don't want to display your number up to 6 decimal places? Maybe you only want to display your number up to 1 decimal place, or up to 2 decimal places, or up to 3 decimal places. How do you tell Python to say, boss, I don't want this number displayed up to 6 decimal places. I only want this number displayed only up to 2 decimal places. How do you do that? That's the next thing you're going to talk about. The precision of a floating point number. It's not very difficult. So, let's take for instance pi. On its own, if you print pi, just to remind ourselves, this is what we have. So many decimal places. However, if you don't say anything, then you are trying to format pi. Okay? You're trying to format pi. You're trying... But if you don't say anything, then you run this. Python is going to decide to display your pi up to 6 decimal places. That's what Python decides. It's like, you haven't told me how many decimal places I'm supposed to display. This thing has got so many decimal places, but you haven't said anything about the decimal places. If you don't say anything about the decimal places, then Python displays your number up to 6 decimal places. However, with these curly brackets, these same curly brackets, these ones, these curly brackets are so powerful that in these same curly brackets, there is room for you to say how many decimal places you want. And where do you put this information about the decimal places? The information about the decimal places, you put it in between the colon and the F, in between the colon and the F, that's where you put the information about the decimal places. And that's what's happening here. Here. Can you see that? After the colon, then there's a dot. That dot there is the decimal point. Okay? So you're telling Python, after the decimal point, I want this many decimal places. So in this case, you are telling Python, after the decimal point, I want 0 decimal places. Show me pi with 0 decimal places. How much is pi with 0 decimal places? When you do that, this is what you get. Pi equals to 3. It doesn't have any decimal places. That's what you've said. You want to be shown pi without any decimal places. Is this clear?
Yes.
If you want 1 decimal place, you tell Python, between the colon and the F, you put the dot. Then you say, okay, after the full stop, after the dot, the decimal point, I want you to show me pi only up to 1 decimal place. The 1, this one here, it's talking about the decimal places. Show me pi only up to 1 decimal place. When you do that, this is what you get. You get pi is equals to 3.1. Have you seen this?
Yes.
You can also decide to say, okay, show me pi up to 2 decimal places. Okay, show me pi up to 2 decimal places here. So you say after the decimal point, 2. That's the number 2 there. So you print that, then you get shown pi up to 2 decimal places. If you want to be shown up to 3 decimal places, you put the number 3 there after the decimal point, between the colon and the F. Then you get shown pi up to 3 decimal places. If you want it up to 4 decimal places, you put a 4 there. You get shown up to 4 decimal places. If you want up to 8 decimal places, you put an 8 there. You get shown your pi up to 8 decimal places. If you want up to 10 decimal places, there. You get shown your number up to 10 decimal places. Is this clear?
Yes, it is.
Brian?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, remember the thing we did about balance?
Yes.
Yeah, this one. So with this one, now when you specify, okay, so like, okay, fine, hello, yeah, that's why I want to put Levy. So you say, fine, you want a name here, string. Your account balance is, then you want to say, okay, I want a number 100 with some decimal places, like that. When you run this, since you did not say anything about how many decimal places here, Python shows you your 100 quarter up to 6 decimal places. Somehow Python kind of tell you, if you don't concentrate on the decimal place, you might think you've got 100 million when you actually have 100 quarter in your account. It's because you did not say anything about the decimal places. How many of them should Python show you? Okay, so you can decide to say, okay, fine, show me only 2 decimal places for the money. Then you do that, run that. Then this is what you get. Hello, Levy, account balance is 100 kwacha with 2 decimal places there, which is for the way, how many ways you have. Any questions?
No question.
Brian?
Question.
Nothing? I'm looking at this. Okay. All right. The next thing we need to talk about, after this, then we can stop. The next thing we need to talk about is the following. You can actually also tell Python, because remember, you can tell Python when you have something like this. Okay, you will curly brackets. You can tell Python which variable to bring here. If you don't say anything about which variable to bring in here, Python is going to bring the first variable in the list, the name in the list of variables which have been given to format. Okay, you can tell Python at this particular position, put the first variable you have been given, or put the second variable, or put the third variable, or put the last variable. You can actually tell Python that. Okay, this is what is known as an index. When you tell Python put the first variable here, the index is going to be 0. Or put the second variable here. The index for anything which is a second in a list, the index is 1. So you can actually tell Python. Now I want to show you something that actually it is possible for you to give an index to this thing. So here we say hello, the same level thing we've been doing, with name, without any index, any position. Hello Levi. Like that, without any index. Now, the index is put in front of the colon. The index is put in front of the colon. Is this clear? You put the index in front of the colon, like that. 0. 0 is the index for this variable which has been given to format. The first variable in the list which has been given to format. So in this case you say hello Levi. So here there is no difference. If it's just one variable, there is no difference. Now the thing of index actually becomes very useful when you have more than one variable, like this thing we've been trying to do here. Levi is 34 years old. Remember when we switched age and name, at some point we had a problem? Do you remember that, Brian?
Yes, it couldn't make sense when the sentence is read.
Yes, actually that problem can be fixed by an index. So what are we trying to do here? So here, instead of just saying in this placeholder we are expecting a string. Okay, instead of just saying that in this placeholder we are expecting a string, and also in this placeholder we are expecting a number, you can add more information. You can tell Python in this placeholder, take the first item in the list of variables or values which have been given to format. The variables given to format are these ones: name and age. These are the ones which have been given to format. So you tell Python, you're telling Python, get the first variable, which is this one, name, bring it here. Okay, bring it here. Once this variable comes here, it should also meet this other requirement. It should also be a string. So get the first variable, put it here, and that variable should also be a string. Then when you come to the second placeholder here, you are saying get the second variable which has been given to format, which is age. Put it here. That variable should be a number. Okay, so when you do this, no problem, it works. So what if someone has mixed up things? Instead of typing name first, the person decides to type age. Then after that they type name. If somebody has mixed up things, then here you change. Instead of using the index 0, you tell Python get the second variable which has got index 1. The index 1 is for the second item. Get this guy, the second guy in the list, put him here. Okay, put him here. So name is going to be put there. Then when you come here, you're saying get the first guy in the list, which is age, and put this age here. And this age should be a number. Then this other one here should be a string. When we do this, when you add these numbers in front of the colon, there is no error. You see? Have you seen, Brian? There's no error.
Yes.
It works. So if you have an error like that, the one we had, after you have specified what kind of information should be put in a placeholder like that, you can also specify which variable in the variables you've given to format, or the values you've given to format, which one should come here. Is it the first one? Is it the second one? Is it the third one? Is it the fourth one? If it's the first one, the first items in any list has got index 0. So you specify the index. Say, I want the first guy in the list to come here. If it's the second one, then you specify the index. So the index is put before the colon. You put the index before the colon, then after the colon, you specify what kind of information should come here, or how that information, that value is supposed to be displayed. The how it's supposed to be displayed, or what kind of data should come here, comes after the colon. Before the colon, you can specify which item has been given to format, whether it's the first one, the second one, or the third one should come at this particular position. Are we clear?
Yes.
Okay. So that's that. Here, same thing. Now this is very important also. The index is very important also because in this case, you only have one placeholder. I'm saying hello, then you only have one placeholder. But format has received how many values? How many variables? It has received 2 variables, name and age. So how does it choose which one to use? You see that? Are you seeing this? We only have one placeholder, but we have got 2 variables. So how does Python know which one to use? You can specify, say, I want you to use the first guy using the index 0. So in this case, if you use the index 0, then Python picks name. Say hello, Levi. If you tell Python you want to use the second item in the list here, you see, I've done something here. Now the age comes first, right? So which means age has got index 0. The name has got index 1. If I do this here, so since I'm expecting the name of a person in, that's a string, then I have switched age and name. Now age is first here, the name is second. I tell Python the index of the variable I want to use, 1. Index 1 refers to the second item in the list. When I do that, this is what I get. So whether now we are handling a situation where whether name and age have been switched, it doesn't really matter as long as you specify the correct index. In this first case here, name is the first item in this list. Okay, so the index is 0. In this case here, Name is the second item in the list. So the index is 1. Is this clear?
Very clear.
Okay, good. You come to here, this bit here. As you can see, we are trying to say hello, whatever your name is, your account balance is so and so and so so. So in this case, what do we have? Format has received 3 variables: name, age, and balance. 3 variables. But how many placeholders do we have? We only have 2 placeholders. This one and this one. So what are we trying to tell Python? In the first placeholder here, the 0, get the first item. I want you to put the first item in the list, which has been given to format. The first item is name. Index 0. That's what's supposed to come here. And that first item which is supposed to come here is supposed to be a string. Then we come here in the second placeholder. You are telling Python you want this 2. 2 is an index for the third item in the list. In this case, the third item is balance. Okay, the third item in this case is balance. There. When we do this, so this balance, which is the third item, has got index 2, is going to be put here. If you don't do anything, if you don't specify, if you don't say anything about the index, for example, right now, if I remove the index, then I run this, you see what happens. You've seen this? If you don't say anything about the index, Python is going to say, okay, I've not been told anything about the index. So it's going to get the first variable, name. It's going to put it here. There's no problem, right? With that bit. So you say, hello, Levi. The problem comes in with your account balance. Because after this, there's a second placeholder here. With this second placeholder, Python is going to pick the age. And it's going to put it here. And your age is going to be displayed in decimal with 6 decimal points. So Python is going to say your balance is 34 with a lot of zeros, like you've got 34 million kwacha. You've seen this?
Yes.
So it's very important that you tell Python which variable out of the variables you've given to format should be put in a particular placeholder. So in this case, you say, okay, the first one, I want you to put the first guy. In this second placeholder, there are 2 other variables. I want you to put the third guy. If you want Python to put the third guy, then the index is 2. Then once you do that, once you run it, it puts the 100. So it picks the correct variable in the list, 100. However, the problem here, as you can see, with your 100 is your 100 has got many decimal places, 6 decimal places. And you're not happy about this because you think like you've got 100 million when you actually have 100 kwacha. So you tell Python, no, the number of decimal places are too much. I want you to only display the number of decimal places only up to 2 decimal places. Okay? You want Python to display your 100 kwacha only up to 2 decimal places. How do you tell Python how to display something? You tell Python how to display something after the colon and before the F. So there. So you're saying after the decimal place, please show me only 2 decimal places. 6 is too much. So when you do that, this is what you end up with. Hello, Levi, your account balance is 100 kwacha. So you can give Python many variables. But if you give Python format, you can give the format function many variables. Like in this case, we have given format 3 variables: name, age, and balance. But we have got fewer placeholders. We only have 2. So you need to tell the format where to put things. Say, okay, the first guy, put him here. The second guy, put him there. Are we clear?
Yes.
All right. This right here is another way of storing information in variables. For example, here, I want to create 3 variables: quantity, item, and price. I separate them with commas: quantity, item, and price. Now, there is this 6. This 6, after the equal sign, then I have got 6, then I've got banana, then I've got 9.5. Okay? So what's going to happen here? This 6 is going to be stored in quantity. Okay? Then this string banana is going to be stored in item. Then this 9.50 is going to be stored in price. So basically, Python allows you to create more than one variable, and also at the same time put in those variables different values. Like this, you can do this. Let's see if it works. So we try to print out quantity. What is quantity? What has been stored in quantity? As you can see, 6. So this value 6, which is the first one, has been stored in the first variable. Then if we print item, then you see that item has got banana. So this banana has been stored in item. Then, so what you expect last is this value 9.5 to be stored in the price. If you do the price, that's what you get. Of course, it's not 9.5, it's 9.5 something. The 0 has been removed. Now, what we want to do is to print the following. We want to print the following: 6 bananas cost 9.5 kwacha. So basically, these are very, very cheap bananas. So how are we going to do that? Well, first, we have to create space where we're going to store the number 6. Next, the item, the name of the item, then costs, then the price. So in this first one here, what we are expecting, we're telling Python we expect a number. In this one here, second press order, we're telling Python we expect the name of something, the bananas. Here, we are telling Python we expect a number with a decimal point. Then we tell Python we want you to show this number with a decimal point only up to 2 decimal places. Then after, in the format, these are the variables. We have given format: quantity, item, and price. Like that. Now when you leave it like this, it works. Because, why does it work? The first variable, since you didn't say anything to Python, this first guy is put here. The quantity is put there. Then the second guy, item, is put here. Then the third guy, price, is put here. You see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. You can do the same thing. You can be more explicit. You can tell Python, oh, I want you to get the first item in the list, put it here. That's why you put an index 0 there. Then the second item, index 1, put there. The third item, put there. Then you run it. You find out that these two are identical. 6 bananas cost 9 kwacha. However, if the order in which quantity, item, and price are given to format changes such that now the first item is price, the second item is quantity, the third item is the fourth thing is item. The order has changed. Okay, if the order changes, you still want to display 6 bananas cost 9.5 kwacha, then you have to tell Python the correct index of your variables, how they've been given to format. You want item. This is what you want. You want how many bananas? There, item. But item has got index what? So you want quantity. And quantity has got index 1. Quantity is the second item in the list here. 6. So you put the index 1 there. Then what else do you want? You want the item. The item is at the end. So you put the index 2 to show that it's a third item. Then you come here, the price of everything. That is the first item. When you do this, you get 6 bananas cost 9.5 kwacha. Is this clear?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
It's very clear?
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to stop here for today. We haven't done everything. There's still some stuff down there which we'll try to look at tomorrow. Unless you've got any questions with what we have done so far.
I'm okay.
You okay, Brad?
I'm equally okay.
All right. So, then today we stop here.
All right. Thank you so much, sir.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you so much.
All
Good
right.
night.
Good night.